Blake Toppmeyer with Mike Wilson and John Adams. Jeremy Pruitt had his first press conference since leaving his role at Alabama here on Wednesday. He's been juggling those duties the last month in a dual role. Now he's all Tennessee's. John, what did you think of the impression he made here in today's press conference?
I really thought, Blake, we saw more of the real Jeremy Pruitt than what we saw at the introductory press conference. I just thought he was so much more relaxed in this setting. There were fewer media, still a nice crowd here, but I think when you're at an introductory press conference, it's just not normal business. And you're trying to make a big impression. It's the first impression. But I thought today he was just more like a football coach, and I thought he was very at ease and thought it came across very well, answered questions directly. I thought it was really good.
And there was a lot of kind of housekeeping to get through, as you would expect in kind of a first press conference in January. He talked about recruiting, confirmed he's made 9 of his on-field staff hires. Looking at recruiting, Mike, they got 14 guys signed in that early window, and the second window still to come. What did you think about what Pruitt said here about recruiting today?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he touched on that early signing period and the challenges. His approach is what you expect most coaches to have. It's an eval of the football player, then the person. With about a 10-day window there, they didn't have that same time to build those relationships. So a little bit tighter, a little bit more challenging what they did, but I thought he made some interesting comments about that. I was curious what positions they want to address. He wouldn't divulge that information for obvious reasons, but yeah, I thought he had some good comments about recruiting and what he wants to do moving forward.
John, your take on the recruiting talk?
Well, I think, Blake, all coaches say the same thing. It's all about recruiting. I think when he says it, though, it really comes through. It's heartfelt when he talks about recruiting. He has a reputation of being a good recruiter, and he knows how important it is, and he's really going after it. And you've seen the results already. Remember, Tennessee was way down below 50 in 24/7 composite rankings, and he's got Tennessee at 16 right now. That's really impressive to me.
I thought one thing interesting he said was that Tyson Helton, his offensive coordinator, had to remind him, hey, it's a little bit different now that you're a head coach. He was talking about, all the guys he wanted to visit, and of course the recruiting rules on visits are different for head coaches and assistants, and that was kind of a light moment in the press conference of Tyson Helton reminding Pruitt that as a head coach, a first-time head coach, he hasn't done this before, that he's going to have to change the way he recruits a little bit and lean on his assistants a little bit more than he was used to as an assistant, who could be really active in the recruiting side of things.
Yeah, you as an assistant, you get to build relations more. He talked about that, Mike. As a head coach, you're a closer.
You're the finisher. You're the big name that comes in on the big guys. That's a big change he's going to have to deal with. But good leaders delegate.
Right.
He's going to have to learn to delegate some of those responsibilities he's used to handling himself.
The roster was addressed as well. I thought one thing he kind of slid in there was that there's been no transfers since the end of the season. I think that's key to note, is that no one left over winter break that that we didn't know about because no one left. And then he touched on Juwan Jennings a little bit, dismissed from this program. I believe it was in November, and he didn't really close the door on Juwan Jennings coming back to this program, but he didn't really sound like it was definite to me either that it was going to happen. It just seems like, what was your read? I thought maybe that kind of future dialogue, but not a done deal by any means.
It sounds like the door's open.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's a wide open door, but he said that Juwan's reached out to Philip Fulmer, met with him. Jeremy Pruitt plans on talking to him more in the coming days. He's already spoken with him once. So the door's open, and you're looking at this roster, you need playmakers. New coach comes in. That's a guy that would be nice to have on the roster. And, heck, when you look back at that situation, he went on a social media rant, which was quite bad. Interim coach kicked him off. It's kind of a weird situation. So it sounds like something Jeremy Pruitt's at least open to, but we'll see what comes of that.
In terms of staffing, he's got 9 of his 10 assistants hired. He can hire a 10th assistant this year. That's the position still left to be filled. It sounds like that final spot's probably going to be on the offensive side of the ball. Likely, I would think, the wide receivers coach. It seems to be the position still open out there. But just generally speaking, John, what do you think of this staff that he's assembled, particularly with Tyson Helton as his offensive coordinator and then Kevin Shear from Georgia as his defensive coordinator?
Well, I think Kevin Shear, just because of his background, you can tell they're in the same system. So I think it's more interesting, the offensive guy, because we think we're going to see what Georgia's done, what Alabama's done, power run game. pro-style passing. He alluded to that in the introductory press conference. But, Tyson Helton's been around. He's done a lot of different things offensively. So I'm really interested in that. And he sounds like this is a guy he's really close to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important because he will be leaning. He's a defensive guy, so he's going to be leaning on this guy a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point. For all the coverage of today's press conference, go to GoVolsExtra.com.